So maybe you're on your way to finding some really great vocal balance and some really good coordination between the systems of your singing. And then out of nowhere, your tongue decides that it really wants to help. Suddenly, your jaw may feel tight, your larynx may feel a little locked and rigid, and your sense of freedom that you feel like you're building goes away. And this is often what happens. You'll address one system of singing and you'll alleviate static, I call it static engagement. You'll alleviate static engagement in one area and it will transfer itself to another area. That's because the body's very smart. And in my experience, the cells of our body have all these different ways of trying to help with an event, or they think they understand what the vocal task is, and so they engage in trying to do something that's actually not really physiologically or acoustically happening. So that'll often happen. You'll adjust one little part of your vocal systems and then attention will creep in or will exert itself thinking that it's being helpful. And today we're going to talk specifically about how the tongue does that. And today I'm also going to show you how you can melt out some tongue tension. And not only will you not lose power, you will gain balance, you will gain option, and actually you'll release a lot of acoustic freedom and probably a lot of sound color in the process. So your freedom actually will increase, your sound will have a lot more options, and you're going to sing with a lot more agency and freedom in this particular part of your vocal tract. Hey there, if you're new here, my name is Dan Callaway. I teach musical theater, voice, and vocal pedagogy at Boston Conservatory at Berklee. More than 25 years kicking around on equity stages and more than 15 years helping singers get to work on Broadway, national tours in the regions and around the world. And I'm very glad you're here with me today. So your tongue, if you just look at its anatomy, it's quite huge. It's pretty alarming when you're not aware of what the tongue looks like. You see it wraps around, it connects all the way into the chin, and also you see that it connects to your hyoid bone. Is this wonderfully mysterious bone. There's no other bone like it in your body, not attached to any other bones. And your larynx is suspended from your hyoid bone. You can also see how the back of your tongue sort of nudges against your epiglottis. Lots of connection points from the tongue to all these other places in your body. And so, like I said, your larynx is suspended from your hyoid bone, and so tension in the tongue will have a cascading effect of tension into your chewing muscles and down into the larynx. So even if I start talking with tongue tension, you can feel what's going on, and that's one manner of tongue tension. There are lots of other manners of tongue tension. It can have lots of different manifestations that can sound different ways, okay? So it's also very interesting to even just be curious about the psychology of tongue tension. And I always say this, have a lot of compassion for yourself and especially for the muscles of your tongue. When we were little and we were learning how to relate and connect and to bid for connection and in love, we often learned that certain forms of expression were met with acceptance and other forms of expression were not met with acceptance. And sometimes our big emotions, sometimes the adults in our sphere didn't love the big emotions, so we learned to tamp those down. So even right now, if you do a little experiment and imagine that you feel like you need to cry, but you don't want to cry right now. And that's valid. Sometimes we don't want to cry in certain places. But if I want to keep myself from crying, where do you feel the muscles engage so that you can kind of put a cork on your emotional expression? A lot of times you're going to feel a lot of engagement in the root of the tongue to help to regulate that, okay? So when we're singing, we're moving vibrating air up through this center of expression. The muscles of the tongue, the cells of the tongue feel this vibration and even emotional energy moving through. Sometimes it doesn't know whether we're singing or if we're about to cry. So it's letting the cells of the tongue start to recognize the vocal task and understand, oh, I'm in a different context. I can function differently. So it's really about letting the body learn, oh, when I sing, it often feels a lot like this in this other part of my life. But then your nervous system starts to define the event that's going on, I find. And so that's very helpful. But have a lot of compassion, a lot of grace for yourself as you move through this. The tongue's like, whoa, that's a lot of energy coming through. We better, it's almost like putting up the dam or managing the locks in a canal. So yeah, really be cognizant of how you talk to your muscular engagements, because they're almost always just trying to be helpful. And so you want to really be like, hey, what do you think you're doing? Speak to them really curiously and with a lot of compassion and say, I want to understand. Even if I don't understand, I want to understand. Your tongue just might be overachieving to either help you feel a sense of stabilization and power or agency, or it might just be trying to mitigate some of this very emotionally charged vibration moving through you. And by the way, if you want to understand how all these systems work together, your body, your breath, phonation, resonance, articulation, overall artistry, I made something called the Voice Map Overview. It is a free visual guide that shows you exactly where tongue tension fits into this bigger picture of how your voice actually works. So you can grab that in the link below in the description while we keep going. And you can even get into a mirror sometimes and just watch the activity of your tongue, especially if you're belting or making in some more high intensity sounds. If you're sensing a lot of retraction, pullback, or just some lock in the tongue, you can just check that out even in the mirror. You can even feel under here. I like to hook my index fingers right here on my chin and just give myself a little gentle massage underneath into these muscles right here, just to see how supple they can be as I make sound. You've got these really amazing muscles underneath here. The geniohyoid, the one that goes from the chin to the hyoid bone, and the mylohyoid going from the jaw down to the hyoid. So a big family of very strong muscles here that have an effect on the root of the tongue. So first, what I like to do is just to see if these muscles here believe they are part of sound making. You see how close they are, but you know that sound happens inside your larynx. That's where the vibration is with the meeting of your vocal folds. So give this a little massage and just give yourself a little I'm just humming, and I'm making sure that these muscles stay soft. There's an N, and then an NG. So any of these nasals are really good just to practice. A lot of times you may notice that these muscles will engage. They think, oh, I'm part of it. I'm on. And they're actually not. So you say, oh, what will happen if I keep these soft? Can I still vibrate? Just letting yourself make vibration through letting them be soft to start to give them the message, oh, you're actually not part of vibration. But they're right next door, so of course they think they're involved. Then you can move over into more articulation exercises like la 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 la, ya 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 ya, ga 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 ga, la ya ga la ya ga la ya ga la. So you can do all manner of, even if I'm just talking, or you can just read something off of a page and just see what happens when you start to articulate, how much of the tongue wants to come to the party. So I feel a little bit of engagement here, but it's mostly the top of my tongue that is active, the dorsum of my tongue that is active for articulation. This is staying quite supple and soft, all right? So you want to just feel that space, hums, gentle articulation, just to give yourself a test. How involved do these muscles think they need to be? And then notice if this really starts to engage, if you really let it engage, notice the oppositional muscles here in the masseters that want to oppose these, and then what happens with these muscles down through the neck. So there's a real cascade of tensions that can happen when one group engages really intensely. Then play with contrast. Sometimes I always say if someone's having a static engagement, or what we would call a tension, I call it static engagement because singing is dynamic. We are engaging muscles, and so I think people need to understand, there's some muscles that I engage and some muscles that I soften, and they relate to each other. If I'm thinking no tension, then I might just be kind of dish raggy, and then that's not good either. I'll tell people to give the tension a full life. And so I'll give the engagement a full life. So if this wants to engage, really, really engage it. Like, I'm feeling that engage. La, 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 la. I mean, it's still a sustainable sound. It's just you can feel the muscles have really gotten very dense, and that affects the sound release, okay? So sound waves are literally... They're moving through this dense muscle tissue a lot more differently than they would move through la 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 la. I mean, literally play with these sounds. because you see, oh, that's what that sound does. And then if I release it out, playing like that. People think it's like you're a kid saying, what will that do? What will that do? It really is very helpful just to give yourself permission to try different engagements, and then your mind automatically starts to compare and contrast, and you have a lot more reference point in order to build new knowledge. And so you want to develop this sensation of letting the tongue kind of rest up into the mouth. And a colleague of mine in New York, Mike Ruckles, he's a brilliant, brilliant teacher and musician. He calls it puddled forward. I love that term, puddled forward. So you want to say, hey. So play around with that. You can manually massage underneath the tongue. And then when you get into higher pitches and things like that, you can check it and see, how much engagement do I need? How much can I do without? Okay, so a few cues to help you soften up the muscles of your tongue as you're singing. Number one, just a sensation of an inhale through the nose. So if you blow out your air, come through the nose, and just sensing the air moving through the nasal passage, down through the pharynx, down the back of the tongue. And as you do that, letting the air soften the tongue. Notice how the tongue rests in the mouth. It can be really soft. And just imagine that air, as you breathe in, is softening out the root of the tongue. The tongue can just receive the flow of air over the back. After you've done that, a really gentle, floaty feeling. And you can check that again with this thumb. And actually, if something is statically engaged, you want to add movement. Anytime something is stuck and still, you want to add movement. So then we can move into, I'll let the air come in, soften, so it can soften through the mouth or the nose. I just find the nose to be a very gentle, warmed, filtered breath. Hum through, and then I can start going into, one of my favorites is this series, La Yaga. La Yaga, La Yaga. Now I feel a little bit of engagement, especially on that ya. I can feel the tongue sort of moving down in the middle. La. But I just want to see, how much is actually necessary. La Yaga, or you can go Yagada, Yagada. I feel more activity on Yagada, but it's still quite supple and soft. La yaga, la yaga, la yaga, la. That's a really helpful one, okay? Then you can add pitches. I like to combine that with a semi-occluded vocal tract exercise. I like to call this loose lips, where you're just letting air move through really, really loose lips. It's kind of like when you're really exhausted. Then I can add any articulation behind that. So it's a really useful SOVT for lots of reasons. And then you can just check with your hands, where do you feel engagements wanting to come in? Really letting the tongue soften as you articulate. I'll go to yagada. And I keep my index fingers here to sort of help keep, because if I don't, then I'll sort of want to push against these thumbs. So anything I can do to just help all of this whole neighborhood relax. And just paying attention to the tongue on hums, on lip buzzes. You can do vowels behind a lip buzz. I like to do that. And just notice the movement of the tongue that creates vowel. Oh, that's articulation. You start to tune in to the gentle movements of the tongue behind these SOVTs, and that helps you to really tune into economy of movement with your articulation and resonant shaping. Then you can start to combine that with nasal consonants, M, N, NG, and vowels. Ma, me, mi, mo, ma, me, mi, mo, mu. Ma, me, mi, mo, ma, me, mi, mo, mu. So you can literally make up any exercise and just check the engagement of the tongue. This makes it a little more challenging because you're starting to move the lips and the cheek muscles a little bit with these M's. Ma, me, me, mo, ma, me, me. Now here I feel a little bit more engagement on that E vowel. So it's like, do I need all that? Me, mo, mu. So that's a fun little experiment. You can ask, can I really soften that and still achieve that vowel? So it's a good way to check in, develop your proprioception. Another big thing that happens, another thing that the engagement of the root of the tongue can do that's not helpful, it can really mess with intonation. So if the root of the tongue is really engaging, and that will create less freedom in the movement of the larynx. If I want to sing anything that's moving into a higher place, the engagement of the root of the tongue can really sit down on top of my larynx, and that's going to inhibit that natural movement of the larynx that wants to coordinate to make higher pitches. A lot of times when people are having trouble, they even might be singing the correct fundamental frequency here in the larynx, but because there are tensions here that are messing with the length of the tube and its ability to sort of coordinate into favorable acoustic shapes, it can really mess with intonation, usually pushing us flat. So if I've got like, hey, I'm gonna do this. I always make these videos in the morning. Hey, hey, hey. That's literally me just engaging the root of the tongue, and that's setting my pitch really flat. And that gets really confusing because you're like, I'm trying to control it. The tongue is trying to help, and it's sending our intonation flat most of the time. Almost all the time it's flat. I think I would even say all the time it's flat. Hey! That's just me doing the tongue, and that's just me engaging the tongue, and that is setting my intonation flat because I'm lengthening that tube out. And then, so I just did this video on belting up in this tricky zone. You can also just see what your tongue wants to do in these places. So I can do a little, and I'm just going to see, do I need the engagement of my tongue to belt these pitches? I'm just looking, and you can check yourself in the mirror. Does my tongue want to retract? I feel my geniohyoid engaging there. And I think that might be helping to bring my larynx into a higher position for this B flat. I don't feel it on this A. Good morning, mucus, forgive me. And then for the B flat, I don't know if I can achieve a belt without a little bit of engagement of the tongue. I can, but it doesn't sound great. Okay, so there's the B flat. If I go to B or C, we'll see what happens. I can do it, yeah. And I feel a little engagement in there. It's just not, the root of the tongue is not bound up. So it's a fun thing to experiment with. I'll see what C5 sounds like. If I go, I feel a little bit of in there, just a tiny bit. That it's not creating anything that's imbalanced or not sustainable. So that's what you have to ask. So you can, like I said, you can do these experiments. So like, how soft can that be? And I can achieve the thing. And when I was doing that experiment, a lot of my muscles was like, hey, don't you want to engage that a little bit like you normally do? So, and yes, the answer is yes, but I'm just seeing, what's possible? Oh, wow. That pitch change is happening within the larynx, and I'm using acoustic factors to shape it, okay? So that's a fun little way to combine the freedom and balance you may be finding with your belt with just to be able to check other possible inhibitors. If something's static and stuck, you want to add movement. So little tongue swishes while you sing like this, behind the teeth. If I go, hey, or even just like, even silly like, my friend Nancy always used to do that. It's so silly, but you say, things can move through. So any way you can move your tongue is a really fun thing to do. Sometimes like sticking it here. There's a little pencil under the bottom of the tongue that I demonstrate in another tongue video. I'll link the tongue playlist in here, and you've got lots of tools on helping to release tongue tension. You can just go into the chapters of those videos and it's pretty clear on where I'm talking about releasing tension. And this, remember, this is happening all inside an entire system of the voice. So your breath, your vibration of your vocal folds, your vocal tract, it's all cooperating. And the tongue's job is to help with resonance shaping and also articulatory freedom. So you're always asking yourself, how much economy of movement can I cultivate? And remember, you are engaging muscles to move air that creates vibration that then sends this really energetic vibration through the tract. So creating a soft and supple place for that to come through feels funny. It is something we have to train. So just know that there are things that are softening, that are being acted upon, things that are engaging, that are acting upon, okay? And overall, this principle is huge. Power of communication, even volume and power of sound, if that's a goal of yours, it does not come in any way from gripping or straining. It comes from that thing I just talked about of muscular engagement, free vibration, and a soft and open, supple, nimble, malleable vocal tract that is adjustable and that you can nuance. It comes from balanced pressure and a balance of resonance. So it's a very strange thing to cultivate if you're not used to it. But the great thing is you can get used to it quite quickly just by playing with all of these different levers and knobs that we know because of the systems of the voice. And if you want to go deeper in how the systems of your voice work, your breath, phonation, resonance, body use, articulation, all of those things, you can download my free voice map guide in the description that will take you right through all the systems of the voice. It links you to deep dive videos on all the different systems. So that will be your go-to guide. I am convinced that if a singer understands how these parts interact and how they affect one another, you can really figure so many things out in a room on your own. It's a wonderful tool, and people start to understand, oh, that's why the soft palate lift does that. Oh, that's why that certain kind of breath pressure does that. Oh, that's why that mouth shape does that. When you start to understand, then you're really off to the races, and you can really get some amazing work done through understanding your instrument. And then you can adjust in the moment when maybe you're performing and you don't have access to your entire technique. So yeah, grab that. It's a whole overview that you can grab from my website, and you get a download. You can just take that with you and have that for life. And in just a week from now, we're going to be launching the Founders Cohort of the Voice Map course. So that information will be in that guide, and I'll also put a link to the Voice Map course that you can jump in and help to create in the description. So remember, any static engagement you're feeling in any muscle group, always meet it with curiosity, always meet it with a willingness to understand, what's going on? Then let that engagement see the vocal task. Most of the time, whatever is engaging, if it sees the vocal task, it'll automatically start to understand, oh, maybe I don't need to do that. So really work with your body. You've got those exercises and ways to locally just check for root tongue tension, and then you can experiment with all kinds of ways of making sound through there. Be patient. Give yourself like 3-minute chunks of just doing that while you're in the shower, while you're in the car, while you're watching some TV. You can pepper in all these little tiny coordinations throughout your day, and it's very simple, and the body starts to learn how to make these coordinations while you're singing. Let your breath affect the softness of your tongue. Think of that idea of the tongue puddling forward. You can do all of those different la yaga, ga ya la, yaga da, all of those different coordinations just to see, how much is required. Then you can even work on singing higher pitches to see, how much tongue is actually involved in me singing higher pitches. Experiment with that. You can make almost any exercise and just check the activity of the tongue. That's the good news. You can make up a lot of this on your own. And remembering that singing involves so much engagement of muscle that's meeting the softening of muscle. So that's a really wonderful interplay of yin-yang, masculine, feminine energies, anima, animus, as Carl Jung wrote about, that's happening within the instrument of the artist. And so that's really what makes it artistry, this wonderful balance. And we can feel that when we hear a balanced, generous voice that is vibrantly sharing and also welcoming us in with hospitality. And that's where true power is. It is the ability to cultivate your voice in a balanced way that lets the most amount of you, authentic you, through your sound. Speaking of authentic you, please remember there is only one you, and somebody would love to hear the story that only you can sing. Love much. Now go sing.